I spent 47 hours learning JavaScript. Then I tried building a simple to-do list. Add a task, remove a task, mark it as complete, that's it. And I completely froze. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what I should be thinking about. And I remember wondering, how is it possible that I just spent 47 hours learning JavaScript and still couldn't build something this simple? What makes this story even worse is that this wasn't my first attempt at learning programming, or my second, or my third. It took me 4 separate attempts before things finally clicked. And the reason the 4th attempt worked is probably not what you think. And by the end of this video, I'll show you the simple framework that finally made coding click for me, the exact shift that took me from finishing courses and still feeling stuck to actually being able to build things on my own. Because after 4 failed attempts, I finally realized something. I thought I was practicing programming. I was actually practicing following instructions. And once I understood the difference, everything changed. Why so many people get stuck? Now, maybe your story looks a bit different. Maybe it wasn't a JavaScript course, maybe it wasn't a to-do list. But if you've ever finished learning something and still felt completely lost when it was time to build your own thing, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you're sitting there thinking, Pete, that's exactly me, good, because it probably means there's nothing wrong with you. You're not old, you're not late, and you're probably not bad at programming. You're just practicing the wrong skill because you've been using a learning method that was never designed to make you think independently. Actually, I'm curious, what's the longest coding course you've ever completed? Let me know in the comments. Mine was 47 hours, and as you've already seen, that didn't exactly solve all my problems. For a long time, I thought the solution was simple. Learn more, take another course, watch another tutorial. And maybe you've done the same thing. One course becomes another, then another, then another. And despite spending hundreds of hours learning, you still don't feel confident building anything on your own. Well, that was me too. And eventually, I realized something that completely changed the way I think about learning to code. And the reason I can say this with confidence is because I've been writing code professionally since 2012. I've spent more than a decade building software, working with other developers, and mentoring juniors. And looking back, I can clearly see the mistake that kept slowing me down. I thought I was learning programming, but I was actually learning how to follow instructions. Because during a tutorial, somebody else has already done the hard part. They know what to build, they know what code to write, they know what step comes next. Your job is simply to follow along. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. The problem is when you stop there. Because the real enemy was never the tutorials. The real enemy was passive learning. Passive learning makes you feel productive without forcing you to think. And that's exactly why so many people feel stuck. Not because they're incapable, but because they're practicing the wrong skill. They're getting better at following instructions when what they actually need to practice is solving problems. The wrong skill. So what changed on the 4th attempt? Honestly, nothing dramatic. I didn't discover a secret course, I didn't find a magical roadmap, and I definitely didn't become smarter overnight. What changed was the way I measured progress. I stopped measuring progress by what I learned and started measuring progress by what I could build. And for me, that meant spending less time learning and more time building. Now, was that frustrating? Absolutely. Because when you're building your own project, you're the one making the decisions. You are the one solving the problems. That's the skill you're actually trying to learn, and that's exactly the skill employers pay for. And honestly, getting stuck used to feel like failure. Every bug, every error, every problem I couldn't solve, I thought it meant I wasn't learning. But eventually, I realized something. Getting stuck wasn't a sign that I was failing. Getting stuck was the learning. And if you're getting frustrated because building feels harder than watching tutorials, good. It's supposed to. That's the whole point. Because if it feels harder, it probably means you're finally practicing the right skill. And once I realized that, I started noticing a pattern. A pattern that shows up in almost every successful developer I've ever met. They all seem to follow the same cycle, the developer loop. Most beginners spend their time in what I call the tutorial loop. It looks something like this. Learn, learn, learn. Watch another tutorial, take another course, feel productive. Still can't build anything. Then I started noticing something. every developer I admired seemed to follow the same cycle. They would learn something, build something, struggle through it, reflect on what they learned, then do it all again. That's when I realized I had discovered what I now call the developer loop. Learn just enough to get started. Build something with it immediately, struggle through the parts you don't understand, then reflect on what worked, what didn't, and what you would do differently next time. Then repeat. For example, learn functions, build something with functions. Learned APIs, call an API. Learned local storage, build a tiny Nodes app. Learned forms, build a contact form. The project doesn't need to feel impressive. It just needs to force you to think. That's where the learning happens. And if you remember only one thing from this video, make it this. Never learn something new until you've built something with the thing you've just learned. And honestly, it's not nearly as comfortable. But that's exactly why it works. Developers don't learn by avoiding problems. They learn by solving them. And here's something I wish somebody had told me years ago. The goal of your first project is not to impress anyone. The goal of your first project is to struggle. In fact, sometimes I think developers are just people who enjoy suffering. We build things, they break, we fix them, then we get excited and build something even harder. Because every bug you fix, every error you solve, every feature you finally get working is teaching you something that no tutorial ever could. And if you've ever looked at a project and thought, how do people even know how to build this stuff? Trust me, you're not alone. Experienced developers are not carrying the answers around in their head. They just solved enough problems to know how to find the next answer. And that's what the developer loop gives you. Not more answers, the ability to find the next one. And if this is the first time somebody has explained programming in a way that actually makes sense, do me a quick favor and hit that like button. It helps this video reach more people who are stuck in the exact same place. How I wish I learned. Now, some of you might be thinking, that sounds great, Pete, but I never know what to build next. And honestly, that's exactly the problem I struggled with for years. One thing I wish existed when I was learning is a place that didn't just teach me concepts, but immediately pushed me to use them. Because when I was learning, I would build something, get stuck, and then spend hours wondering, am I even doing this correctly? Why isn't this working? Is this a good solution or a terrible one? I didn't have anyone giving me feedback. That's one of the reasons I've partnered with Scrimba and continue recommending them. They combine the video and the code editor into one, so instead of just watching somebody else code, you can jump in and actively participate as you learn. The instructor teaches a concept and then immediately gets you to apply it. And if you get stuck, Scrimba's AI can give you feedback and help point you in the right direction. Whether your goal is front-end, back-end, Python, full stack, or even AI, they've got you covered with many free courses and dedicated learning paths. If you'd like to check it out, make sure to use my link below to get an extra 20% off their pro plans. AI doesn't change this. But let's be honest, even if you start building projects, you're still going to get stuck. A lot. And that's where something has completely changed the way people learn programming today. You guessed that right? AI. Now, I know some people are watching this and thinking, Pete, if AI can write code now, what's the point of learning programming? And honestly, I think that's the wrong question. The question isn't whether AI can write code. Of course it can. The question is whether you can solve problems, because that's the skill that's always been valuable. I use AI every single day. In many ways, this is probably the best time in history to learn programming. But I think a lot of beginners are making one very important mistake here. They're using AI to avoid the exact thing that's supposed to help them grow, the struggle. Because if every time you get stuck, AI immediately gives you the answer, you're skipping the most valuable part of the learning process. Let's say you're building a weather app. You have two options. Ask AI to build the entire feature for you, or try solving it yourself first and use AI when you genuinely need help. Those two approaches produce very different developers. AI should help you think better and not think less. In other words, use AI inside the developer loop, not instead of it. And if you're worried that AI means you missed your chance to become a developer, I would actually argue the exact opposite. This is probably the best time in history to learn, as long as you're using AI to strengthen your thinking instead of replacing it. Because AI doesn't replace the developer's loop, it accelerates it. What employers really want. And this brings us to something else I wish somebody had told me much earlier. If you're learning programming because eventually you want a job, there's something important you need to understand. Companies don't hire people because they know everything. They hire people because they can figure things out. That's exactly what the developer loop teaches. Not because companies are impressed by another to-do list, but because projects force you to practice the skill that actually matters. Figuring things out. Same skills you will use in a real job. And that's exactly what employers pay for. Not perfect knowledge, not memorization, not certificates, but the ability to solve problems and find answers when you don't have them. Which is great news because if knowing everything was the requirement, none of us would have jobs. And if you're trying to become a developer, switch careers, or simply get better at programming, consider subscribing. That's pretty much what this channel is all about. The lesson that changed everything. So, if you've spent months learning programming, watching tutorials, buying courses, following roadmaps, and you still feel like you're not making progress, I want you to remember this. The fact that you're struggling doesn't mean you're failing. It probably means that you're finally practicing the part that actually matters. Because developers aren't created when everything works. They're created when things don't work. Years ago, I couldn't even build a simple to-do list after spending 47 hours learning JavaScript. Looking back then now, I'm grateful for that. Because if building that to-do list had been easy, I probably would have kept learning the wrong way. So here's my challenge for you. Remember the developer loop? Learn, build, struggle, reflect. This week, complete one loop. Not 10 loops or a huge project, just one loop. Pick one thing you've already learned and build something with it. Anything, small, ugly, broken, just finish one loop, okay? Then come back and tell me in the comments what you built. I would genuinely love to hear it. And if there's one thing I hope you remember after this video, it's this. Knowledge made me feel like a developer. Struggle is what actually made me one. Like, subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching, you legends. I'm Pete, and I'll see you on the next one.